I don't know why I have to do that every week. Select the microphone. Why does it always reset? It drives me nuts. But anybody, welcome back to episode 3 of Sports Betting Truth Live. So, geez, a lot to talk about. So, first of all, who actually has a sports betting TV show, radio show, podcast, YouTube channel, whatever that's worth a darn? When I ask that, I see this question asked all the time. Like, do you have any good recommendations for a sports betting podcast or radio show? They're all crap, guys. They're all crap because, like I've always said, they operate from the assumption that just listen to my podcast or listen to my TV show or radio show or YouTube channel. Just listen to me, my advice. I have the keys to make you win. I will give you the winning advice. And none of that is true. I don't operate from that assumption. I let you guys know up front, hey guys, if you bet on sports, you're probably going to lose. In fact, you are going to lose. Let's face it. If you're winning, you don't need to watch my show. You already have it figured out. If you're not winning, well, you're probably not going to get it figured out. So there you go. So the thing is, you see, like on ESPN, or MLB Network, you have all these people that are betting experts. What makes them betting experts? Seriously, what are their credentials? What are their qualifications? No one knows. So we just have to take their word that they're betting experts. It's funny, at my gym, they have the TVs on, and either ESPN's Daily Wager or Fox Bet Live, or even like just short betting segments within SportsCenter, NFL Live, or whatever, are in there, and they're always giving out their picks, and I'm like, based on what? Like, what makes you an expert? But anyway, they're all trash. Just like the same question is always asked of who's a good handicapper to follow on Twitter. Who's a good they're all trash, guys. If you had something of value, aka winning picks, you would not give it out for free, right? And so now you're going to obviously make the conclusion that, okay, so only touts have picks that are worthwhile. No. If you have winning sports betting picks that are proven to win long term, you're not going to sell them. You're going to keep them proprietary and use them yourself to enrich yourself. If you had a proven long-term track record of betting on sports, you would not tout them out. You would keep that under wraps. So anybody who's giving away picks, whether they're for free or they're paid, those picks have no value, guys. None. Anyway, I digress. Getting into NFL Week 1. I told you guys last week, and I know Eric Catherine came in and said that I think he was big on was it the Lions or the Texans? It was one of those two, but both of them covered. But it looks like more often than not, like I was saying last week, is that the public, the public was wrong, like they usually are. They're just not wrong to the tune of 52.4%. You can fade the public and you're going to win more than you lose. You're just not going to win at a high enough clip to profit. But still, it looked like NFL Week 1 last week that was the case. I don't think the Bills were against the public, but I know the Falcons were, the Bears were, the Lions, Texans, Vikings, Giants, and Seahawks. Those teams were all not public plays, and they all either won outright or covered. I mean, the only teams that were, public favorites or teams that the public were on that ended up covering, I think the Bills were, the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Ravens, and maybe the Chargers and maybe the Redskins, but more public fades won than public plays. Let's put it that way. And so the question is, will that carry over into Week 2? That's the thing. I didn't really get to sit down and watch a lot of NFL this weekend, unfortunately. I watched the second half of the Bills and the Rams, and I watched the Cowboys game on Sunday night, but I was working out all day on Sunday. I had a 2.2 mile swim, almost Ironman distance, just a couple hundred meters short of Ironman distance swim. and then a 19-minute mile run. So that took up most of my Sunday that I did while NFL is going on. But the Cowboys, what a joke, man. I'm not a Cowboys fan, by the way, but it's just funny. Dak Prescott is not it. I've been saying that. He is not it, and yet Jerry Jones and all the Cowboys fans around here act like he's God and that he's the best quarterback ever and that they would totally be 16-0 and Super Bowl bound if he didn't get hurt, even though he played like crap against the Bucs the other night. He's just not that good, and he's made of glass. He's made of glass, and now the Cowboys find themselves in the same situation like they usually are. They need a quarterback to save them from not making the playoffs again. It's funny how they put all their hopes and dreams into one guy who's really not that good, and there we go. So kind of a pivotal game here in Dallas for week 2. The Bengals and the Cowboys, one of the two are going to start 0-2, and I told you guys, I was not very bullish on the Bengals coming into the year. Yeah, they made the Super Bowl last year, but I think they played way above their head. Pretty much all the playoff games they won were very close. It could have gone either way, and they're going to regress to the mean. And losing the Steelers, I know they had some missed extra points and kicks and stuff. They should have won that game, but still, I see regression to the mean. But just looking at this week's slate with the Chargers and KC tomorrow night, KC is the they're like the Gonzaga. They're like the Atlanta Braves of the NFL. Like, remember the Braves in the 90s? They'd always dominate the regular season, yet they only won one title. I know they won the Super Bowl in 2019 to get that monkey off their back, but that just seems like they always dominate the regular season and fail in the playoffs. So they'll probably dominate the Chargers tomorrow night and have a good regular season, but it's anybody's guess what happens in the playoffs. Man, Washington at Detroit's going to be a terrible game. The AFC South is a mess. Tampa Bay, New Orleans should be interesting. But really not a lot of good games on the slate this week. I mean, Tennessee and Buffalo on Monday night might be good, but I don't think the Titans are that good. How's it going, Rasheem? How's it going, Real B, BBB? Joe McMillian, I did see your comment about Texas, Alabama. We'll get to college football in a second. But not the greatest NFL slate this week. But like I said, I wasn't a big NFL guy. But the playoffs last year made me a little bit more interested. So I'm paying a little bit more attention. But like I said, if you just go against the public, you're probably going to win more than you lose. You're just not going to win enough with that strategy alone. So when it comes to who the public's on this week, I mean, no doubt they're going to be all over the Chiefs tomorrow night. Although I would not really necessarily endorse a play on the Chargers. They're probably going to be on the Redskins. Let's call them what they are, the Redskins. Just like I still call them the Cleveland Indians. Because the Lions are getting points, and the public's going to be like, oh, the Lions are getting points. Let's be all over them because the Lions suck. They're probably going to be all over, I'm looking for some public plays this week, and I can't find any. Probably the Colts. Man, the Rams are giving 10.5. That's a lot. I'm looking for they'll probably be on the Bengals because Dak Prescott is out, and the average bettor's not going to do any more research than that. So I would probably be on the Cowboys. Yeah, Cortland Williams is right. Their public is all over the Bengals, so I would definitely be on the Cowboys. They're going to be all over the Broncos, probably all over Green Bay. Jeez, the Buffalo's giving 10. I'm not a believer in the Titans, but I think 10 is too much. I'm sorry. But yeah, there's not a lot of really like public fades this week. But I think fading the Bengals is probably the best one. The public doesn't do much research. And they'll probably look no further than, Dak Prescott out, the Cowboys will get blown out. They'll leave it at that. But the Bengals aren't that good either. I wish I was more in tune to totals. I don't really know enough about the NFL to really know about how totals are a lot different. Man, the Gematria people always derail this chat. Yeah, but just looking at totals, I mean, Gosh, the NFL is weird. I don't know if I would ever bet totals in the NFL because it's such a standardized game when it comes to scores. In college, it's a little bit different because there's a wider range, more variables, a lot higher variety. But NFL's tough. NFL's tough. But yeah, NFL Week 2 starts tomorrow. We'll see. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to watch again this Sunday because I have an Olympic distance triathlon on Sunday that'll take pretty much all day to, it's a off week for me on training. When I say off week, I don't mean I'm not training. It's just every fourth week, my training load reduces to about 60% of what I normally do during the week. But then on Sunday, there's a triathlon. Usually they're Olympic distances. I've done a 70.3 4 weeks ago, which was horrible. It was pouring down rain. I got soaked. Aiden O'Brien, they're 40 and 1, but what are they betting? Are they betting money lines? Are they betting big favorites on money? Like, pure record can be manipulated. That's what touts like to do. They'll bet a bunch of big money line favorites, like at minus 10,000 in college football, rack up an impressive record. But really, are they betting spreads, totals? If it's 40 and 1, yeah, you verified it yourself. That is extreme luck, like lottery ticket luck. Slot machine progressive jackpot luck to go 40 and 1. Okay, money lines, yeah. Even MLB money lines, that's still very lucky. I mean, even if you're betting, minus 250, minus 300 favorites, the odds of going 40 and 1. Okay, I'm minus 150 to minus 170. Yeah, that's slot machine progressive jackpot level luck. That is lottery ticket luck. That is being struck by lightning luck. Even on minus 150 to minus 170. Yeah. Because remember, minus 150 only represents about 60%. If that. 59, 60%. So even if you were to flip a weighted coin that landed on heads 60% of the time, over 40 games, you're probably only going to go like 24 and 18. And even 3 standard deviations to the left is going to be like 32 and 8. So to go 40 and 1 is, that's like 6, 7 standard deviations, which is astronomical odds. So yeah, pure run of luck. That person is probably going to turn tout pretty soon if they haven't already and capitalize on it. That's crazy. Yeah. That's crazy. Like, my luckiest runs of all time, I came nowhere to that. Like, times where I felt like I couldn't lose, like when I was on that heater betting college basketball second halves and live lines back in 2021. I was only hitting like 64% at my peak. All right. Let's switch over to college football real quick, which is the main thing I wanted to talk about on the stream tonight. If you've followed me since last year, you know I'm not a big fan of NIL. I'm really not. But I think we're starting to see it backfire. Already. It's been a year and it's already starting to backfire. When I say backfire, this was my theory all along, is that NIL, especially when taken to the extremes that programs like Texas A&M has taken it to, where they're spending tens of millions of dollars on their roster pretty much, all that's going to do is create a locker room full of entitled prima donnas that aren't willing to put in the work, the drive, the effort, because they're already getting paid before even accomplishing anything. Usually you get paid after you accomplish something, not before. But since it's kind of like Ironman training for me. I'm always really motivated to go out and ride my bike or get in the pool or run when I haven't eaten yet, because I'm hungry and I know when I'm done with the workout, I'm going to eat. And therefore, it's kind of like the reward of eating after a hard workout is kind of what drives me. But there's times when I don't have, when I have to eat before my workout because either I don't have time to eat after my workout or whatever. And then I'm not as motivated to do my workouts because I've already eaten, and that's kind of like the reward. So the reward receptors in my brain, I kind of feel like that happened to me yesterday. I ate before my bike ride last night, and I just didn't really care much to ride my bike. I'd already eaten. I didn't really have that reward at the end of the hard bike workout. It's kind of the same with NIL. You're paying these players before they've accomplished anything to come play for you, and their drive's not going to be there. They're going to have a sense of entitlement. They're going to have an entitled attitude. They're going to be like prima donnas. They're just not going to have that drive or effort. And I think we saw that. I think we've seen that with Texas A&M this year. When I was in Las Vegas, I bet on Sam Houston State to cover. They did, and A&M did not look good against them. And then they got beat straight up by Appalachian State last week, which should never happen. Texas A&M has all these 5 stars on their roster. But why would all these 5 stars that got paid millions of dollars to go to Texas A&M care enough to put in the effort and work and all of that when they're already getting paid millions or hundreds of thousands? And so I think we're starting to see that backfire with programs like Texas A&M. We're seeing it backfire with guys like DJ Ugalele at Clemson, who just hasn't been that good. And maybe it'll correct the problem. The NIL problem will correct itself. Because I guarantee you, Appalachian State doesn't have a lot of guys on their roster that is getting paid. I bet you'll have individual players at Texas A&M that are getting paid more than the entire NIL collectives at most Division I schools. That's what I said. I could not imagine being in the locker rooms I was in at TCU 10, 12 years ago, and guys are getting paid. I couldn't imagine. I know what people are going to say. They're like, oh, players have always been paid. Now it's just out in the open. Well, if players are getting paid when I was at TCU, they either didn't get paid a lot or they did a very good job at covering it up, because the best players, I was roommates with some of the best players on the team, and they were always asking me for money. So if they were getting paid, they either didn't manage their money very well, or they weren't getting paid that much, or I honestly don't think anyone on my TCU teams were getting paid. I don't. So I could not imagine a locker room of some of the guys I played football with at TCU that were getting paid. It would have been different. There would have been tiers. Like, it would have caused a lot of strife and division and kind of like a hierarchy in the locker room. There would be envy and strife and jealousy, and he's getting paid, I'm not, even though I put in all the work and blah, blah, blah. It's a recipe for disaster, and I think Texas A&M is the first example we're starting to see of it backfiring. Because they've spent more money than anybody on NIL, and they just lost to a team they had no business losing to. So that's kind of my soapbox about NIL. Let's recap college football week 2. It was a great week, guys. It was a great weekend. Great weekend. So I went to bed early on Friday night because I got up at like 3:45 in the morning on Saturday to do my 5-hour bike ride and 1-hour brick run. So I didn't watch Louisville and UCF, but I listened to it while I was on my bike ride. That was a good game. And I told you guys on the stream last week, UCF did not look impressive against South Carolina State. They got off to a fast start, just like they did against Louisville, but then their quarterback, they adjusted, both South Carolina State and Louisville, and showed that the UCF quarterback couldn't pass the ball, and the offense stalled. The only reason they were able to run it up against South Carolina State is because South Carolina State, first of all, sucks, and second of all, it came mostly on special teams and defense. Punt returns, punt blocks, fumble returns, interception returns, which they weren't able to get against Louisville, and they got shut out in 3 quarters. UCF, the program, has been on a decline since 2018. They're a mediocre program, just like Boise State. They're the Boise State of the East. Both teams are on the decline. I don't think Gus Malzahn's the guy, but we'll see what happens when they're in the Big 12. But anyway, good Friday night game. Saturday was awesome. I probably finished my bike and run at around 11:30, so I got back to my apartment about 11:45. The Alabama-Texas game, when I turned it on, I expected Alabama to be up like 21-0 or something like that, and it was tied 3-3, I think. I was surprised. Honestly, I was very surprised that Texas was able to keep it close, but at the same time, I'm not. If you look at Alabama's schedule last year, Bryce Young did not play well in true road games. They lost to Texas A&M. They should have lost to Auburn. That's not the only one. Did they almost lose to somebody else on the road also? Florida. They beat a crappy Florida team by 2. Really, the only true road game they played well in was Mississippi State, who wasn't that good last year. I remember Texas Tech blew them out in the bowl game. A bad Texas Tech team that TCU blew out on the road. Last year's awful TCU team. So Bryce Young and Alabama did not play well in true road games. They need to fix that. But at the same time, I was surprised that Texas was able to keep it close. A lot of people are giving credit to Gary Patterson for coming up with a good defensive game plan. And to be honest with you, watching the game, his fingerprints were all over it, especially on run defense. I think Gary Patterson was in charge of the run defense strategy for the week. I know how he plays run defense, and all the hallmarks were there. So credit where credit is due. Everybody was giving him credit, and I have to agree. I'm sorry. He was the reason that game, at least the run defense was there. But Alabama pulled it out in the end. UT got the moral victory, a pull boost that no other program would probably get. Like, what if it was North Texas that took Alabama to the wire? You think they would be in the top 25? No. But since it's Texas, they got the moral victory, blue blood boost in the polls. But it was a good game. Saturday was awesome. So I still do my cooking on Saturdays during football season. Week 2 every year, I always make my yellow enchiladas, otherwise known as soft cheese tacos. I made a whole pan of them, ate them all. I also made a brownie sundae with the caramel turtle brownies and Bluebell homemade vanilla ice cream, white chocolate syrup, and nuts. It was so good. But, I was hungry after doing an 85-mile bike ride and a 6.5-mile run on Saturday. I was hungry, and then I kind of passed out on the couch for a little bit. I slept during the mid-games, but then I woke up for the ending of Texas A&M Appalachian State, which didn't surprise me. I expected when I woke up and changed the channel of that game, I expected, A&M to be up by maybe 10, and I expected the score to be high because of Appalachian State's defense the week before, but no. Appalachian State hung on and won. Good for them. The Florida-Kentucky game was good, but I stayed up all the way till 2 in the morning. I was tired. Remember, I got up at 3:45 on Saturday, and I stayed up all the way to 2 in the morning to watch the end of that BYU-Baylor game. That was a great game, too. Still not sold on Baylor. I'm not sold on Blake Shapen. I think they're a little bit overrated at 9 to start the year. They won a lot of 50-50 games last year. And you always expect teams that win a lot of 50-50 games to regress to the mean. How about Houston? Did I not call that on the stream last week? Houston on the road to Texas Tech. Didn't impress me against UT San Antonio. They played one of the worst schedules in 2021. The only reason they were ranked is because they played such a bad schedule. I think they were bottom 5 in strength of schedule as an American Conference team, which is pretty hard to do. And really the best team they played in the regular season last year was Texas Tech, and they lost to them. I think that was the only... I think they had one win over a team with a winning record last year. But anyway, they didn't look good against UT San Antonio, on the road against Texas Tech, and they lose to a Texas Tech team that's probably going to go 3-9, maybe 4-8. And here's the deal with Houston. Their schedule is so bad, they're probably going to go 11-1 in the regular season again. With once again, the lone loss being to Texas Tech just like last year. And they're going to be saying, oh, we get no respect, blah, blah, blah. You can't lose to a Texas Tech team that was horrible last year and is probably going to go like 3-9 this year and demand respect. I'm sorry. They're not that good. How you doing, Eric Catherine? So, Eric Catherine, who is that NFL public dog you were on last week? It was the Texans, right? Or the Lions? Either one of those two. One of those two covered. Well, they both covered, but I know you're on one of those two, and I told you I love the play. That play. Yeah, Craig Robb says, don't be hating on UCF. The program will only continue to improve. Well, that's the thing. They're not improving, though. They're declining. Since 2018, they haven't done anything. I mean, yeah, they've won 8 games, but eight wins in a non-power conference is not that impressive. at TCU, we won't. An 8-win season would be considered a massive failure when we were in the Mountain West. I mean, in 2007 we went 8-5, and that was like the worst season we had in the Mountain West. Every other season in the Mountain West, we won at least 11 games. So that's kind of like the bar is. If you're not winning double-digit games you can't, which UCF hasn't done since 2018, that's not that impressive. Like, I know they beat a crappy Florida team in a bowl game last year, but that's a Florida team that just fired their coach and didn't really want to be there, but what does that matter? So, yeah, they need to be winning with all the built-in advantages they have. They need to be winning 10+ games, and I didn't see that against Louisville the other night. I do think UCF has a better chance of rebound compared to Boise State. I said Boise State, they made a string of good coaching hires, but as soon as they made a bad hire, their program was, I wouldn't say finished. I wouldn't say stick a fork in them, they're done, but it's going to take a long time for them to really get back to where they used to be. Yep. Fading the public was awesome. Pretty much all the public plays covered in week 1, because a lot of the plays I was on in week 1 in Las Vegas ended up covering. That's how I had such a good weekend. But it was the public got slaughtered in week 2. Yep. They got slaughtered for the most part. But yeah, overall that was a entertaining day, and I can't believe, I was so tired. I slept till about noon. I went to bed at about 2:30 in the morning after that BYU Baylor game, and that's why I got started on my swim and run so late and had to miss all the NFL action during the day, because I was tired. And I can't wait for Ironman to be over. It takes up so much time. I'm tired. That's why I started the stream at 7 instead of 7:30, because I want to go to bed sooner rather than later. I was up 5 this morning to run, swim, also lift. It just takes up so much time. I went to a place called Fuego Burger today. It was so good. They had a burger called the Fuego Burger. It's unlike any burger I've ever had. They have fried cheese on it. Not like melted. I mean, it's half melted on the cheese that covers the burger is melted, but they spread it out around the burger. So it's like on a flying saucer of fried cheese around the burger. It's crazy. Yep. Yep. I can't wait for it to be over though. But looking ahead to week 3 college football, like I said, I haven't looked at the schedule. I'm kind of weird when it comes to college football. I usually don't look at the schedule till the day before Thursday, so Wednesday, just because I kind of like to be surprised. Okay, I kind of like to not know what's in store, and then. All right, so this upcoming week, the Thursday games, Air Force, Wyoming, Florida State at Louisville. I think the public's going to be all over Florida State. I do. Oh, they beat LSU. They're back. Here's the deal. LSU is like a 6-6, 7-5 team at best this year. Pretty much all the LSU fans I know say that. And they're saying that before they lost to Florida State. Wait, that's a Friday. So there's no Thursday game this week. Okay. So Florida State, Louisville on Friday. I think the public's going to be all over Florida State, so Louisville might be a good play. Air Force and Wyoming. Wyoming bounced back against Tulsa. Overtime win after that pretty humiliating loss to Illinois, but they beat Tulsa. I think they had 2 punt blocks for touchdowns. So we'll see if they can get it done on special teams. But Air Force, I think this is Air Force's hardest game on their schedule, to be honest with you. Air Force is projected to go unbeaten. I mean, looking at their road schedule, at Wyoming, at Utah State, at UNLV, at San Diego State. I mean, Utah State lost by 28 at home to Weber State. UNLV isn't very good. San Diego State got blown out at home by Arizona. I mean, this is a schedule Air Force should go undefeated against, and I think Wyoming is their hardest game. But then just looking at Saturday, I mean, Akron is miserable. BYU and Oregon. We'll see if Oregon can bounce back from that humiliating Georgia loss. No, I don't count what they did to Eastern Washington as a real game, but we'll see if BYU's for real. I know Oregon got blown out by Georgia, but I think BYU will. I think them going on the road to beating Oregon would be a big statement for them. I don't think BYU is that good. I don't think they can beat Oregon, but we'll see. Notre Dame. I didn't even talk about them losing to Marshall. I saw the end of that. That game and the Appalachian State game kind of ended at the same time, so I saw the ending of that one as well. I think I said it on the stream last week. Notre Dame made a bad coaching hire. If you're a blue blood program, you do not hire a coach with 0 head coaching experience and only 1 year of coordinator experience at a big program. He was defensive coordinator for 1 year at Notre Dame. 1. And got promoted to head coach. That's not a program that you have on-the-job training with as a head coach, and we're starting to see it. I told you last week before they even played Marshall. But the media had already crowned him as an amazing hire. I know Notre Dame fans were like crapping all over LSU fans, saying like, especially after LSU lost to Florida State, Notre Dame fans were like, we made a big upgrade at head coach with Marcus Freeman, and you guys are stuck with Brian Kelly. Takes that age badly for 1,000, Alex. That was like the first thing I thought of when I saw Marshall lose, was all those Notre Dame fans who think they made an upgrade at head coach over Brian Kelly. The media had already written like stories over, like USA Today, Washington Post. They had already written stories. You can look them up about how successful of a coach Marcus Freeman was before he's even won a game at Notre Dame. Let's face it, the media wants him to succeed for a reason. Anyway, we'll see if he can turn around, but they have a game against Cal on Saturday. We'll see what happens. Georgia at South Carolina. That's probably my favorite game every other year, because every year South Carolina plays Georgia at home. It's always a year where like South Carolina, they're always like, this is our year. It seems like the even numbered years ever since 2010 or so, whenever they play Georgia at home, it's always like heavily hyped. I remember 2018 especially. South Carolina coming off a better than expected year. Georgia just coming off a heartbreaking loss in the national championship game to Alabama. And South Carolina played Georgia at home in week 2. Heavily hyped up game in the offseason. South Carolina blew out Coastal Carolina to start the season. So there's a lot of hype going into that game. And Georgia blew them out. But that's one of my favorite low-key games every year, and so we'll see. Let's face it, guys. South Carolina's not going to win. Can they keep it close? I don't know. Probably not after they lost to Arkansas, but we'll see. Kansas and Houston. I want to bring that game up because Kansas, they're 2-0. I don't count the win against Tennessee Tech. Like, Tennessee Tech is considered a body bag team in the FCS level. They're one of the worst teams in FCS, but they did go on the road and beat West Virginia, which I told you guys last week. Can West Virginia overcome that heartbreak against Pitt? They didn't. So we'll see if Kansas is for real or if they're a fraud against U of H. Miami and Texas A&M. Man, if Jimbo loses this game, that's going to... I don't know how Aggieland's going to react to that. But I don't think Miami's that good either. I think they're highly overrated. So this game might expose Miami instead of A&M. Michigan State at Washington. I've seen a lot of people bring that game up this week because even though Michigan State is ranked 11 and Washington is unranked, Washington is favored, and everyone acts like that's like never happened before. It happens all the time. If you understand how lines and odds work, then it makes total sense. Michigan State last year, remember when I was running my model last year, in Michigan State, despite they went 11-2 or something, they were always in the 50s in my model because their metrics were terrible. So you got to remember, metrics are different than record or ranking. And I feel like metrics are more accurate than record or ranking. So keep that in mind. Ole Miss at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's a dumpster fire, but Ole Miss hasn't really been impressive so far this year. Nevada at Iowa. So Nevada gave up 55 points at Incarnate Word last week. If Iowa's putrid offense can't score on that, then who can they score on? Oklahoma and Nebraska. I saw someone say that when Nebraska fired Scott Frost, the line shifted 3 points. That's not true. But maybe firing Scott Frost will inspire Nebraska. I don't know. But Oklahoma, they've looked vulnerable against UTEP and Kent State. I mean, they were only up by, 7-3 at halftime against Kent State, and UTEP was able to sustain some drives on them. So this is going to be their hardest test to date. Penn State and Auburn, that was a game that was so hyped up last year, and both teams ended up being pretty average. That's probably the case again this year. Auburn's not very good. San Jose State had them on the ropes on Saturday. Pittsburgh, Western Michigan. Western Michigan beat them last year in Pittsburgh, so we'll see if Pittsburgh can overcome the injury to, who is it? Slovis, and also overcome the heartbreaking loss of Tennessee. I'm looking at the schedule here. It's not a very good schedule this week, guys. Texas Tech at NC State. I think this is where Texas Tech gets exposed. Like I said, they're a 3-9 team. UTSA at Texas. Will Texas have an Alabama hangover? That's the thing about moral victories, is that they're probably, Texas, even though they lost Alabama, it's not a game that they're going to be hung over from. It's not, it's the opposite. It's more like they're getting all the pats on the back, the moral victory. They're probably feeling really good about themselves. So the question is, how good are they feeling about themselves to the point where they could overlook UTSA? Yep. Not that good of a week 3 slate. A lot of body bag games. Yep. Eric Catherine says there's been value on baseball because everyone's on football and the numbers are off. You're right. Markets have less volume once football season starts, non-football markets. So they're a little bit easier to exploit. So Eric Catherine's right. Craig Robb wants to know, I've learned the hard way coaching staff is a great way to find value in lines. Would you agree? The thing is, I feel like coaching staff is arbitrary. There's some ways you can look at it psychologically, especially in body bag games. Some coaches are more likely to run up the score or attempt to cut. I think James Franklin at Penn State's a great example. He knows what the spreads are in body bag games and will try to cover them. Lane Kiffin's another example. He tried his best against Troy on week 1 and didn't get it done. So that's why Ole Miss might, have some issues, because they were really trying to cover against Troy and they still couldn't get it done. I am so thirsty, guys. I could be drinking a lot more water. It's gotten cooler. It's only in the upper 80s, 90s as opposed to hundreds all summer. And I feel like because it's getting cooler, I'm not drinking as much water, even though I should be. I got to tell you, though, I did a run this morning. It was 65 degrees. That's probably the coolest weather I've ran in since, I don't know, March, and it was awesome. I'm tired of running in hot weather. I mean, I did my 19-mile run at about 4 in the afternoon, from 4 to 7 this past Sunday, and it was upper 80s, low 90s, and even that was very pleasant. A lot of people think that's hot, but compared to what it's been, 100 plus in humidity, and then running in the 110s in Las Vegas, it was great. But yeah, you run a lot faster when it's cold. I did my marathon last year when it was 32 degrees at start. Yeah, I just can't wait for Ironman to be over with. I mean, I'll still run after Ironman, but biking and swimming, I'm definitely going to have to make something like that seasonal. The thing with swimming is that I didn't mind it at first when I was only doing workouts that were a cumulative total of 2,200, 2,500 yards. You'll be in the pool at most 45 minutes to an hour, but now all my swimming workouts are 3,800 yards or 4,500 yards, and you're in the pool for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And the thing with bike is that something always goes wrong. Like flat tires, I bought some gator skin tires, which are supposed to be puncture resistant, but I've gotten more punctures on those than the tires I had before that. having to fix flat tires. Like one of my spokes came off, having to get stuff repaired or maintenance, just all the headache that comes with that. That's what I like about running. All you need is a pair of shoes, and that's it. Everyone keeps asking me, is this going to be your only Ironman? I don't know. Like, ask me 2-3 months after I'm done. You'll see if you get the itch. It's kind of like sports betting modeling. It's something you got to get the itch for. And I haven't had the itch for sports betting modeling since last college football season. It's something you got to want to do because it's a lot of time. Now, if I were to do another Ironman, I wouldn't do a 28-week program like I've done this time. There's Ironman programs out there that are 16 weeks, 20 weeks. Like, I started in April. Like, if I were to do it again, I would only do like a 4-month program, not a 6. How you doing, Jonah Mickelson? Betting on early of the season is much more fun than later in the year. I agree. And I think the reason that is, Jonah Mickelson, is that you haven't lost yet. Like, it's kind of like baseball. Every year baseball season starts and all the fans of all the teams are excited, But then once, for example, the Rangers, who have been crap the past 5-6 years, once you realize they suck, you stop caring. You're not like, I was watching and listening to all the Rangers games earlier on in the year. But then when I realized they suck, I stopped caring. It's kind of like the same with betting. Betting early in the season, you're like, this is my year. I got it all figured out. I'm going to have a really good year betting on NFL or college football or both. And then, after multiple weeks of losing, you get sick of it. And you're like, screw this. I'm moving on to NBA or college basketball. And the cycle continues. But I feel like that's especially the case with NFL and college football because it's once a week. So you don't, for example, in a sport that's every day, you're going to lose and hit that point a lot quicker. And with it being once a week, you can kind of you have time to get over your losses and time to regain your optimism. Because I know when I was living in Las Vegas, there would be weeks where I'd bet on football and I would lose and I'd be like, that's it. Not betting on football anymore. But then Wednesday, Thursday would come around and I'd regain the optimism, and next thing I know I'd have a stack of betting tickets in my hand. Some people might call that problem gambling addiction. No. It was just how it was. But Jonah Mickelson is right. Grub Warp, you ate a whole pizza for dinner. How big was it? You want to know what I ate after my 2.2-mile swim and 19-mile run this past Sunday? I went to a pizza restaurant called NYPP, New York Pizza and Pasta, in Irving, Texas. I got an 18-inch pizza and a calzone, ate it all, and I finished it off with tiramisu. Today, after my workout, my swim, run, and lift, I went to a place called Fuego Burger. I got 3 burgers, one of which was a 1-pound burger, and some chili cheese fries. And then I went to Brahms afterwards and got a ice cream sundae with 2 scoops of black walnut ice cream, a scoop of peanut butter ice cream, drizzled in hot fudge, nuts, and whipped cream. I don't eat like that every day. I just needed the calories today because I didn't eat much on Monday and kind of restricted myself too much yesterday. So it was more of a refeed day today. But ate a whole pizza for dinner and checked out. That's what I felt like today after eating those burgers. And that's what I did on Sunday. I was eating that pizza and calzone while the Cowboys were playing at that restaurant. But as soon as I got home, I laid on the couch and was out, which I normally can't do after I eat a lot. Because on my watch, after I eat a lot, my heart, not after I eat a lot, but whenever I eat carbs, my heart rate spikes and the stress meter on my watch spikes. Oh, the keto diet? The keto diet. I did, when I was training for marathon, I went low carb. So when I was training for marathon, I did the 5-2 diet. So the 5-2 diet is 2 days a week. you fast completely. Nothing all day. So 2 days a week when I was training for marathon, I fasted. And then 2 days a week I would eat low carb, so keto. And then the other 3 days a week I'd eat whatever I wanted. But Grub Warp 12 inches, yeah. You know, an 18-inch pizza has more area than a 12-inch pizza. So it's more than twice as big. The more you know. I will say I didn't eat the crust of that 18-inch pizza. Usually I will if I'm not having a calzone with it. Yeah, Jonah Mickelson. That's why betting early in the season, especially in football, is so fun because things aren't established and your optimism's still there. You know how many football seasons I've checked out betting wise, like midway through the season? More than you would think. 2015 and 2016 especially, when I realized my models were not cutting it, I just checked out. I stuck with it in 2017 because my model was doing good, and 2018 and 2019, but yeah. A 12-inch pizza, that's a thing. I just feel like I'm going to have an eating disorder when I'm done training for Ironman. You know, last week I burned over 30,000 calories for the entire week. That's like 4,500 calories a day just to maintain. I lost weight last week because I sure as hell didn't eat 30,000 calories last week. And that counts the 18-inch pizza, the calzone, and the tiramisu. Even with, I still didn't hit. So I lost like weight last week because it's hard to eat enough when you're training for Ironman, especially now that I'm in my peak weeks, like the peak of my training. So I'm really burning a lot of calories. And I feel like I'm going to get an eating disorder because I'm either always hungry or I'm always hungry, but I'm not always eating because I'm always like, oh, I'll just make it up tomorrow. Like yesterday, I didn't eat enough yesterday. So I just I'll make it up tomorrow, which I did today. Yeah. But I don't always make it up. It's a lot easier said than done. And so there's no way I could eat just a 12-inch pizza. I would still be hungry afterwards. And like I said, I feel like I'm going to have an eating disorder because when I'm done training for Ironman, I'm not going to be burning 30,000 calories a week anymore. You know, I'm going to cut that big time. And yet my brain and my reward pathways in my brain and my appetite and my hormones and all that are still going to, have the baseline caloric intake, a lot higher. And I'm worried that I'm terrified of having like an eating disorder when I'm done with Ironman. Because I've gotten myself so used to eating 3,500, 4,000 calories every day, if not more than that. After my 60.3, I ate 7,000 because I burned 6,800 doing the 70.3. I ate 7,000 afterwards. So I'm so used to eating a lot of calories every day. I'm worried that that's going to be like the baseline that my body expects, and it's going to retaliate when I'm not eating that much anymore. So I'm really worried. We'll see what happens, though. Maybe it won't be like that. We'll see. But I tried to do some research on that, and the only thing I could find is that a lot of people do Ironman to overcome their eating disorder. It's kind of like the opposite, is that all the research I found is that people are like, how do you put it? They were like anorexic while training for Ironman, because they felt like they had to be thin to swim fast and run fast, and they weren't eating enough and turned it to anorexia and bulimia and all that stuff. So when I was looking for Ironman related eating disorders, that's all I could find. I couldn't find anything about, oh, I'm eating too much and now I have a food addiction, and now since I'm not training for Ironman anymore and not burning as many calories, I'm having a hard time adjusting to a lower caloric intake. But we'll see. Maybe I can be the focus group on that one. Craig Robb wants to know, when you're running models, were you looking for value against posted book prices? No. So I know that there is a group out there, what is it, Odds Jam, that's their gimmick. It's pretty much buy our software, and we'll compare all the lines that you have deposits in at those books, we'll compare it to Pinnacle. And anything that's off the Pinnacle line, we'll have you hammer it. Now, I've always say you don't need to buy OddsJam software for that. You can do it yourself, but it is what it is. And I'm sure that might not be the worst strategy. Will it? But it feels like the equivalent of counting cards in blackjack or playing advantage video poker machines. And is the juice really worth the squeeze? Yeah, you'll probably profit in the long term, but the margins are going to be so small. Like being an advantage player at video poker, like the machines that pay out over 100%, like say there's machines in Las Vegas that pay out 100.6% long run. But even if you play max credits and are very quick and everything and play that perfect strategy, you'll make like $10 an hour in the long run if you do it all right. Is that really worth it? Same with counting cards in blackjack. If you're able to find a blackjack table you can sit down at, that you can count cards at, that won't back you off or any of that stuff, like in the long run, how much money are you truly going to make? And so I feel the same thing about arbitraging Pinnacle lines. I feel the same way. Like the margins are probably going to be so small that is it really worth it? That's how I feel. Yeah, is it raining? Yeah, that's the issue. Jonah Mickelson was scraping lines on websites, is that a lot of them you can't scrape because websites are 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you could scrape every website because they still use HTML. But now most of them these days use JavaScript. You got to be very well versed in JavaScript to scrape these days, and I'm not, so. You really think so, Holo123? I think the Vegas shooter was a FBI patsy. I think he was a patsy. I don't think he was a. I don't think that's true. Stinger07. This is the first MLB season my model has maintained moderate success throughout the season. Usually won for 2 months and trended down to nothing. It's taken 3.5 years and a ton of work of time. Congratulations, Stinger07. That's pretty much how it was for me in college football. Like, it took me 5 years to finally get a model that profited the whole season, and then it profited 4 straight years. So maybe you do have it figured out. Hopefully you can replicate it next year if you choose to do so. I never really had a lot of success at MLB, and I put a lot of effort in my MLB models. I mean, you saw that right here on this channel for those of you who've been around. I tried in 2019, I tried in 2020, I tried in 2021. They were all... 2019 wasn't bad. It broke even. But 2020... 2020 wasn't bad either. It was really DFS that sunk me in 2020, but 2021 was an abject disaster. And 2021 was the one I, by far and away, put the most time in. So, congratulations, Stinger07. A lot of work and time. That's an understatement. That's the thing. When I built my MLB model in 2021, I was living in Las Vegas. I was living off the money I had won from my old employer. When I say money I had won from my old employer, they basically paid me $60,000 to not make some certain information public. Let's put it that way. On the condition that I would leave the company. So I basically had knowledge of something that was a big no-no, and they knew I had knowledge of it, and in order to keep me quiet, they basically paid me $60,000 to walk, and I took it. Could I have gotten more? Yeah. But anyway, when it was in Las Vegas last year, living off that money, and I had a lot of free time. I wasn't training for Ironman. I wasn't even really doing much cardio. I had a ton of free time, so I was able to have all the time to build that MLB model. But now that I work full-time and training for Ironman, but even before Ironman, I was training for marathons, I just don't have the time, energy, or desire to do that. So, Jonah Mickelson, why don't you work for Analytics Sports Team? It seems like That is what you would love. I would love to do that, but those jobs are very hard to get. Those jobs aren't really jobs you can just apply for. I mean, you got to know somebody. You got to know somebody. I mean, I've applied for them, but I've never even gotten an interview. But no, I would love to. Trust me. But yeah, those jobs aren't very many, and they're hard to get, and you probably got to have more credentials than I have. They probably want you to have like a PhD in statistics or something like that. Not me. I was a bachelor's degree in journalism. All right, I want to talk about my Las Vegas arrest. I made a video about this in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, but since I did it on my camera that had no audio, it's not going to work. I might make a separate video about this, but so my case got dismissed finally, so I can talk about it. I was arrested on April 17th, 2021 in Las Vegas. So on Saturday mornings when I was living there, I'd always go down to the Strip to run because it was pretty much empty, especially during the era of masks and all that. Not like today where you're doing nothing but dodging pedestrians and homeless people and beggars and all that stuff. So I was minding my own business running, and I was running across the drive that is in between Planet Hollywood and Paris. And the walk sign was on, so I had the right of way to cross the street. And a casino security truck for Planet Hollywood turned right, did not see me in the intersection, and I kind of had to hop out of the way to avoid being hit. And so as the truck passed me, I kind of backhanded the back of it when it passed me by, just to get their attention and let them know that they almost hit me. And I stopped, and I got out my phone to take a picture of the back of the truck so I could report them for reckless driving. And so I'm sitting there trying to, open up my phone to take a picture of this truck. And all of a sudden, these security guards get out of this truck and immediately start being aggressive towards me, pushing me, shoving me. You touched my truck. You touched my truck, man. You touched my truck, And I just let them know. I was like, hey, you almost hit me in the crosswalk. And they didn't care. They're just like, you touched my truck, man. You touched my... They were really mad. And so I was like, you know what? Screw this. I went on my merry way. But then they grabbed me. And they're like, no, you touched my truck. You're going to jail. And I'm like, what? Like, you touched my truck. You're going to jail. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, whatever. You guys aren't real cops. I don't have to listen to you guys. You don't have the authority to send me to jail. So I just tried to, head back towards Mandalay Bay where I was parked, finished my run. But then they chased me down and shoved me up against the fence in front of Mon Ami Gabby outside Paris. I could not breathe or anything. They had me shoved up against this fence, and they're like, we're holding you and putting you in handcuffs until the cops get here to send you to jail. I'm like, you guys can't be serious. And so I'm trying to wiggle out, but they're bear hugging me really hard. I couldn't breathe. And then one of them's like, if you make one more move, I'm going to F you up and knock your teeth out. And I'm like, okay, well, just let me breathe. I couldn't breathe. I'm wiggling like a worm, And they're like, I'm going to F you up. I'm going to knock your teeth out if you keep moving. I'm like, okay, just let me breathe. And they're like, you can breathe just fine. And at this point, bystanders and pedestrians and tourists are starting to see what's going on. And they all have their phones out thinking this is another George Floyd situation. And all the bystanders were like, go easy on him, let him breathe, all that stuff. And they wouldn't let up on me. And so finally I was like, guys, I cannot breathe. And I'm sitting here trying to wiggle out of their bear hug grip, but pinning me up against this fence. And finally the guy was like, all right, I've had enough of you resisting. I told you I was going to F you up. So he picks me up and body slams me onto the sidewalk, like WWE style. My head hits the ground. I get a concussion. I'm knocked out. So they put me in handcuffs. And so I regain consciousness. The cops are there. I'm up against the fence, sitting there with hands behind my back and handcuffs. And the 4 security guards are giving their side of the story. And not me, though. I didn't get to give my side of the story. And so the cops are like, hey, we're sorry those security guards roughed you up. They're a bunch of wannabe cops, meatheads who are out with something to prove with a chip on their shoulder because they're not cops for whatever reason. And like, hey, we're just going to put you in the back of our car and take you back to wherever you're parked and you can go home. We're sorry about all this. And I'm like, okay, sounds like these cops are on my side. And I believe them. I got in the back of the cop car. And then, they start driving, and then all of a sudden, we're not going towards Mandalay Bay where I'm parked. We're going towards downtown where the jail is. And so when I realized I was going to jail, I was like, hey, what the hell? I thought you guys would take me back to my car. And they're like, nope, we're taking you to jail. You shouldn't have vandalized that car. I'm like, what? Vandalized? Are you serious? I didn't vandalize it. And like, we got you on video striking the truck. And I'm like, well, yeah, I tapped it with the back of my hand. I didn't do any damage to it. And they're like, well, too bad. Those security guards say you dented their truck and it's on camera of you hitting it. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. And so I'm in jail. And so I'm like, what the hell? I'm in handcuffs. I'm in leg irons. And, they process me, take my mugshot and everything. And so I'm like trying to ask questions. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And a lot of the cops were jerks. I was like, hey, I'm just trying to get some information. Like, you need to sit down and shut up. And I'm like, I'm just, I just want to know what the process is, right? I've never been to jail before. And like, we shouldn't have been arrested. I'm like, I'm sorry, And so finally one cop in the jail kind of gave me the 411. He was like, hey, you're probably going to be here till tomorrow because you're not going to be able to see a judge until tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to be here all day, all night. This was at like 6 or 7 in the morning on a Saturday. Yeah. So I had to sit in a cell with like 25 other dudes. It was cold. It was dirty, crowded. For like, 24 hours. It was miserable. Absolutely miserable. There was nowhere to lay down. Since it was crowded, you just kind of had to like lean up against the wall. It sucked. And so I see a judge and she was like, I'm not sure if there's enough evidence to convict you or indict you, bring this to a grand jury or whatever. So I'm going to release you on your own recognizance, blah, blah, blah. So she orders me released at about 8 a.m. on a Sunday morning. But by the time I actually got out of there, it was 8 p.m. on Sunday night. It took them 12 hours to process me out. And so I had to go back to court a month later. And the district attorney requested, additional time to overview the case. And since I was moving out of Las Vegas, I was like, well, I'm not going to be here to represent myself the next time I have to be here. So I had to hire a lawyer for $2,500. $2,500 to defend myself from a bogus charge of vandalizing. My official charge was vandalism of a vehicle totaling $250 or less. That was my charge. And it finally got dismissed. I had to spend an entire weekend in jail. The most miserable 36 hours of my life. Because a bunch of meathead security guards were mad that they... I think those security guards reacted the way they did because they knew they screwed up and almost hit me in the crosswalk and knew that if I had taken a picture of their truck and reported them and everything, they'd probably get disciplined in some way, maybe even fired. So I think that was just their way of turning the tables and making sure, I didn't report them. Make me act like I was in the wrong. But anyway, everyone's like, a lot of people ask me, like, did you try to sue those security guards for giving you a concussion and being so rough on you? And I did look into it. I did contact some legal offices, and none of them wanted to take the case on. They're like, yeah, you were definitely abused. And they said I would have had a slam dunk case if I had never made contact with the vehicle. But they said even if I lightly tapped it there, like even if you sneezed on it, that would be enough for the legal team of Caesars Entertainment, which is a Titan in Las Vegas, to, get the case thrown out or whatever. So they're like, yeah, you got brutalized by the security guards, but Caesars Entertainment is too powerful to take on. So, yeah, that was my story. I made a video. I reenacted it in front of Paris in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, but since there's no audio on the camera I use, it's kind of useless. So, all right, Juan Soto Enjoyer wants to ask about PredictIt. Is Beto worth buying 16 cents on PredictIt? That's a great question. I think we're too close to the election for. I think the time to have bought Beto is back in July. I wanted to bring up PredictIt, political betting, because we see this every election cycle, guys, and that is summer polling is notoriously inaccurate, mainly because of something called response bias. Republican-leaning voters are far less likely to answer polls and complete surveys in the first place, but they're even less likely to do it in the summertime. So you have all these polling outfits conducting surveys and polls in the summertime when Republicans aren't answering. And so you have what's called response bias, and that's how you get ridiculous polls every summer and every election cycle. And that's why I think buying Beto 2 months ago would have been better, because you would have been able to get out in front of what I call the summer non-response bias polls that shot him up, because I think he was at 9 cents before the summer. He's at 16 now. You could have doubled your money if you got ahead of that, but I think he has nowhere to go but down, because we're too close to the election, and now pollsters actually have to start doing their jobs. We saw this with the Marquette University law poll today in Wisconsin. So Marquette University is considered the gold standard of Wisconsin polling, even though I think they suck. They usually put out trash polls and then herd. When I say herd, it means they put out a poll that's realistic like a week or two before the election, just so they can say, hey, we were right. And even though all their trash polls before that weren't. And so last month, they put out a poll showing Ron Johnson, the Republican incumbent senator in Wisconsin, down by 6, which is total garbage, guys. Total trash. And today they release a poll showing Ron Johnson up by 1. And I'm like, guys, as someone who used to do this for a living, public opinion does not shift like that in 1 month. Mandela Barnes, who is the Democrat candidate for Senate in Wisconsin, was never ahead. He was never ahead. It's just that Marquette University put out a trash poll, like they always do in the summer. Wisconsin's a very hard state to poll because it's there's such a large rural population. Most of the state is closer to North Dakota or South Dakota, but unlike North or South Dakota, you have Madison, Milwaukee, two bigger cities that you don't see in those South Dakota or North Dakota, or even Iowa. Madison and Milwaukee are bigger than Cedar Rapids and Des Moines, but I digress. So it's very hard to reach the rural population in Wisconsin, and that's why you have so many election cycles. Like, remember the poll we saw in 2020, Joe Biden up by 18 in Wisconsin? That's how you get polling misses like that. Response bias and not reaching rural voters in Wisconsin. And Joe Biden ended up winning, I put that in quotation marks, by less than 1 percentage point in Wisconsin. So plus 18 was never the case. So I want to bring that up because now is the time to start, in my opinion, buying these Republican candidates out there whose predicted and market numbers are down because these betting markets are being influenced by these summer response bias polls. I think the two best bets right now on PredictIt are J.D. Vance in Ohio and Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. Neither of those guys are going to lose, but you can get J.D. Vance for 75 cents. In my opinion, that's like buying dollars for 75 cents. I am maxed out personally. I am maxed out on J.D. Vance. I have $1,700 in that market, which is the most you can put in a single market on PredictIt. And I think Ron Johnson is not going to lose in Wisconsin, guys. And you can get him right now for like 65 cents. I'm also very bullish on Dr. Oz and Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania. If you look at the polling, I think Fetterman and Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, they're at their ceiling. They have polling leads, but you need to look at the percentage they're getting. They're stuck at like 46, 47%. If they are over 50%, that would be one thing, but they're not. And when you look at the makeup of the undecided voters in Pennsylvania, they don't approve of Joe Biden. They don't approve of the Democrats. They have all the makeup of the type of voter who would vote against Democrats in a cycle like this. In an off year, first term incumbency election, they have all the makeup of that in Pennsylvania. So I think Dr. Oz and Doug Mastriano are great buys below 50 cents that you can get in those markets right now. I think Adam Laxalt's in good shape in Nevada. Carrie Lake, she is going to win governor in Arizona. You can get her for about, 60 cents right now, which is a steal. I would wait for the margin of victory market in Arizona for Carrie Lake. I think she's going to win by 5+. Now, one of the candidates I'm not so high on is Blake Masters. Now, I like Blake Masters a lot personally. He is the Arizona Republican Senate candidate, but the problem isn't so much that he's a great candidate. The guy he's running against, Mark Kelly, is a fake moderate. He ran as like a astronaut, American hero, moderate Democrat who's going to vote just like Kristen Sinema. That's what he ran on in 2020, but he has a voting record now. Mark Kelly has a voting record. He has voted pretty much 100% of the time with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. He's not a moderate. He's a far-left Democrat. The problem with Blake Masters is that the Republican Party does not support him. The Republican Party is trying to throw that race on purpose. The Mitch McConnells and Kevin McCarthy's of the world, the Republican leadership, want candidates like Blake Masters to lose so they can say, see, we told you so. You can't nominate these Trump-backed candidates. You have to nominate our pre-approved Republican establishment candidates. That's what Blake Masters is facing right now in Arizona, is he has no party support. We saw this play out in the New Jersey governor's race in 2021. Jack Cifaretti got no support from the Republican Party at all because they believed the trash polls out there and trash media narratives that he couldn't win. So they invested no money, and he only lost by what, like 1 or 2 points? If the Republican Party had supported him in any single way, shape, or form, Jack Cifaretti would be governor of New Jersey right now. Blake Masters is suffering the same issue. You have guys like Peter Thiel and the Heritage Foundation that are trying to pick up the slack that the Senate Majority PAC and NRSC and Republican National Committee aren't doing. He's getting no national party support, so like people like Peter Thiel and the Heritage Foundation are having to pick up the slack. But the thing is, Mark Kelly has more money than any other incumbent senator out there to spend. So if Blake Masters is going to pull this off, it's going to have to be on the back of Carrie Lake in the governor's race, and in spite of being heavily outspent. That's why I'm not as bullish on Blake Masters as I am on someone like Dr. Oz, Herschel Walker, who I think is going to win in Georgia. J.D. Vance, those types of candidates. So overall, the advice I'm giving right now, if you're going to bet on PredictIt, is take advantage of the summer non-response bias polling to get candidates like J.D. Vance and Ron Johnson at cheap prices. Even Herschel Walker, cheap prices. And yeah, I mean, I still have most of my money tied up in the guaranteed markets like Greg Abbott in Texas, Ron DeSantis in Florida, Utah Senate, but still, now's the time to go after those dips. Jay Boak, the parlays are killing you this year. Yeah, pretty much everybody. The Bengals, yeah, if you're on the Bengals, that was probably a tough one just because what they missed, extra points, field goals. But to be fair, they did score a touchdown with no time left. But the Bengals, they are my pick of a team this year in the NFL to fade. Like, not like fade bet against every week, but like they're not going to have as good of a season this year as they had last year. They massively overachieved last year. How you doing, Scott K? Yeah, Herschel Walker, I think the polling's starting to turn into his favor, Scott K. Herschel Walker, the polling is starting to turn into his favor. Like, he had actually pulled ahead in the Real Clear Politics average this past weekend. But, of course, right on cue, Quinnipiac releases a poll showing Raphael Warnock up to flip the average back to Warnock. But Quinnipiac is a horrible pollster. They have a massive Democrat bias. I wouldn't take anything Quinnipiac says seriously. Like, I think they're the ones who released the polls showing Joe Biden up by 18 in Wisconsin in 2020. Either that or they had like Joe Biden up by 6 in Ohio, which is a state that Trump won by 9. They also had Joe Biden up by 6 in Florida, a state that Trump won by 4. So they have proven they do not know how to poll. So, but yeah, I think Herschel Walker is in good shape because you have football season coming up. Raphael Warnock, if he was going to beat Herschel Walker, he had to put him away before football season. And football season, you know, all these Georgia voters are going to get like, with football front and center, they're going to get nostalgic about people like Herschel Walker running, and that's going to be hard to counter. Zero Bog, how long should it take to turn 40 into 1,000? I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to answer that. Gosh. I think the problem with that question, Zero Bob, is that you have an arbitrary start and end point. If you are dead set on winning a certain amount of money, you're in for trouble because it's going to be very hard to stay disciplined. It's going to be hard to stay disciplined because you're like dead set on winning that $1,000. So you're going to chase, or you're going to overbet your bankroll. You're going to make bets you shouldn't be making. If you're going to make any money at all in sports betting, which, like I say, 99.9% of people don't. But the 0.1% of people who would be able to turn 40 into 1,000 would do it by having a very disciplined approach, not overbetting their bankroll, and patience. So how long should it take? Well, if you're trying to turn 40 into 1,000, let's say your unit size is $40. So basically you're trying to win 25 units. Winning 25 units can take a long time. My best football season, 2018, I think I won, like 21 units or something like for the entire season. Now, college basketball, my best college basketball seasons, I won 60 units. So I was able to do it in December and January of 2019, 2020. But I got lucky. So how long should it take? In my opinion, if you're lucky, like if you're disciplined enough and have a proven approach, it's going to take you more than a year if your unit size is $40. Yeah, even doing the Scott K method of doubling up your bet after each successive win will only get you to 800. So, yeah, that's a very tough ask. Jonah Nicholson, big believer in the Dolphins this year. That makes 2 of us. I do think they're going to have a good year. The Big Short 08, thoughts on App State with the upset and securing $1.5 million. So Big Short 08, I did spend a good 5 to 10 minutes talking about just that earlier in the stream, maybe 20 minutes in or so. But to recap, what I said is that I think Texas A&M is the first example of NIL backfiring. When I say backfiring, I mean you're paying all these players all this money. You know, the word out there is that Texas A&M spent over $30 million on their current roster. So you have a roster of college football players with a payroll that equals that of a Major League Baseball team, you know, a cheap Major League Baseball team, but still. You're just going to have a bunch of entitled prima donnas that aren't willing to put in the work because they've already got paid before accomplishing anything. So it's kind of like, okay, what's going to motivate them? What's going to drive them? They're already getting paid. It's just going to cause division and strife, jealousy, envy in the locker room. And so when I've watched Texas A&M the first 2 weeks, I see just that on the field. That's the product I see on the field. I see entitlement. I see laziness. I see a bunch of guys who aren't willing to put in the work, who feel like they already have it made. Texas A&M's offense scored 7 points against Appalachian State. They had a kick return for a touchdown. And their one touchdown was not like a sustained drive. It was a deep pass that went for a touchdown. So Appalachian State should not beat a team like that with the recruiting, the level A&M is recruited at. But I think NIL is to blame for Texas A&M losing to App State. I do. And I think we're going to see more and more of that as these bigger programs with the money to fund these massive payrolls for their college football teams. And I think it'll bleed over into basketball as well. Is that it's not going to play out. Yeah, you're paying money to secure these players who are talented from high school, but if you're paying them money up front before they've accomplished anything in college, that's a recipe for disaster. I'm sorry. It is. And so I hope we see more of that. I hope we see more NIL backfiring. I think we're seeing it all over. I mean, it just hasn't completely manifested itself like it has with Texas A&M, but you see players who got paid before accomplished anything, like a DJ Ugalele, kind of suck. Ohio State hasn't really been that impressive so far this year. They have a big NIL payroll as well. So I hope it all blows up. Yeah, Appalachian State and Troy is kind of a weird, like, is that Appalachian State's best game, like home game? Like, could they have gone to another game for game day? I mean, I know the schedule wasn't that great for week 3, so maybe it's just kind of like by default. Yeah, that was probably the best. Yeah, their home schedule is terrible, so I can see why. Yeah, J-Boke is right. You need a bigger bankroll to win $1,000 starting at 40. Like I said, you're basically trying to multiply your bankroll by 25. That's going to be hard. Yeah, Scott K., I talked about that Troy Ole Miss game earlier in the stream, but Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin is one of those coaches out there who knows what the spread is in body bag games and will try to cover it. And no matter how hard Ole Miss tried against Troy, they couldn't get it done. They shut down Ole Miss's offense. Randy Harris did a test on Wager Talk and Pick Dogs. Free picks losing thousands over 1,500 picks. Why am I not surprised? Remember how mad Pick Dogs got when I did that video about them back in January? They got so mad. Are they still around? Is Pick Dog still around? What happened to Notre Dame? They made a bad coaching hire. I've said that on these streams many times. Marcus Freeman was hired for one reason. All right. Yeah, I remember Ohio State played Toledo like 10 years ago, and Toledo almost beat them. Actually, I think they played Toledo like in 2008, and it was the same story. How do you feel about the Chiefs tomorrow? I talked about the Chiefs earlier in the stream, and they're like the Atlanta Braves of NFL. They're a regular season champion, and then in the playoffs they not so much. But I think the public is going to actually be. The public will probably be all over Kansas City in that one, and I can honestly see Kansas City winning by like 14. So honestly, I might agree with the public there if they're on KC. Yeah, Marcus Freeman, like I said earlier in the stream, you don't hire a head coach with no head coaching experience to coach a blue blood. Like, I know Oklahoma hired a guy with no head coaching experience, but at least he had like decades of experience as a coordinator at a very high level and won national championships as a coordinator and has ties to the Oklahoma program. I think he used to be a coordinator for Oklahoma, so I get that. But Marcus Freeman, look at his resume. One season as coordinator at Notre Dame. They had an okay year. And then he was coordinator at Cincinnati, not a big program. I get it. Cincinnati had a pretty good run when he was there, but that was too big of a step up. Notre Dame hired him for one reason and one reason alone. Yeah, I think people are going to be on the Chiefs. I think the public will be on the Chiefs just because they're at home and they dominated the Cardinals last week. That's how I feel. They're going to be like, oh, they're playing at home, blah, blah, blah. What's the spread? Isn't it 4.5? I just think I don't think 4.5 is enough. I think it should be closer to 6.5. I'm sorry. Iowa and Iowa State game under. Yeah, I have a good friend who's an Iowa grad because I used to live in Iowa, and he was texting me. He was like, bet the under this week for Iowa because Spencer Pentress is starting. And I said, well, they're playing Nevada, who gave up 55 points to Incarnate Word last week. So if he can't move the ball on that Nevada defense, then there's nobody he's going to be able to move the ball on. But yeah, that Iowa offense is horrible. I don't feel bad for Cowboys fans at all. If you lived here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you wouldn't feel bad for him. I was laughing in my rear end because I was at a pizza restaurant on Sunday night when that game was going on, and it's so fun to watch Cowboy fans when they're losing because every year they think, okay, the Cowboys are Super Bowl bound, they're going to win it all, blah, blah, blah. So entitled, so arrogant. And then they look like crap, and they're delusional. They still like, oh, it's just one loss, we're still Super Bowl bound. It's not until they're mathematically eliminated from playoff contention until Cowboys fans finally come back down to earth, and then they will be like, oh, I never thought we were good this year. I always knew we sucked. I'm like, you're a liar, man. That's kind of how Cowboys fans are. But I don't think I don't think Dak Prescott is any good. I'm sorry. Yeah, he got hurt, but I think it's addition by subtraction. I'm sorry, he's not that good. He holds him back. UTEP New Mexico total is 38. Yeah. Have you that UTEP offense though? They sustained drives against Oklahoma. They just couldn't finish them. I'm telling you, Oklahoma, they might not be that good. They're only up 7-3 against Kent State at half the other day. And then UTEP, I had Oklahoma like minus 31 against UTEP, and it took a late touchdown for them to cover. UTEP could have very easily covered. They were moving the ball. Like, they were. I'm sorry. But New Mexico, I think they run a triple option offense that runs the clock. So that's probably why the total's so low. Is my mouse not working? There we go. What do I think about the Seahawks plus 550 against the 49ers? Well, I think that's a bridge too far for me, Jonah Mickelson. The Seahawks aren't that good. They just played a game. They just played out of their minds against the Broncos with that crowd, the situation. They're not going to be able to replicate that magic in San Francisco. I'm sorry. What do you think about hedging your bets? I support hedging parlays if you have the ability, but that's about it. Yeah, Nevada is horrible. Well, Nevada lost their coach, and a lot of players went with him to Colorado State. And so Nevada's roster is terrible. So they lost Incarnate Word like 55-41. Incarnate Word, which is a small Catholic school down in San Antonio. They've only been in FCS a few years, but they're not a good team. So if Iowa can't move the ball against them, who can they move the ball against? Yeah, Scott K. I would probably bet Nebraska too. Oklahoma, if you've watched Oklahoma's games, which I have, by the way, because like I said, I bet them week 1 against UTEP, and I paid very close attention because it looked like they weren't going to cover because UTEP was sustaining drives. And it took the second half for them to pull away against Kent State, who's really not that good either. So Dylan Gabriel wasn't really that good of a quarterback at UCF. I think Oklahoma, they're not that good. I'm going to say it right now. We'll see if I'm right. Rocky Long is still the DC at New Mexico. Well, he was their head coach all the way up until 2008, and he stepped down because he felt like the New Mexico athletic department wasn't investing enough money in the program, and he's like, I've taken this program as far as I can go. So he went to San Diego State to be the defensive coordinator there under Brady Hoke, and then took over once Brady Hoke went to Michigan. Had a good run at San Diego State, but then he retired, and I guess he didn't like retirement, and now he's back to being a DC at New Mexico. And that's Rocky Long for you. Do I think Trey Lance is overrated? Well, it's kind of hard to be overrated when you really haven't played yet, but I do not think he was a very good draft pick, and I don't think he's going to be the quarterback San Francisco's looking for. So I don't know if overrated is the right word, but not good is definitely the right word. All right, guys, it is 8:30. Wow. I thought I'd go like an hour max because of how tired I was when I started the stream, but you guys gave me some energy, but no, I need to get some sleep. I'm tired. I was up at 5 this morning to run. It was the greatest run ever. Like, I haven't run in 60-degree temperatures in months. Felt great. Didn't even need to bring water with me. That's the best part, is you can just run without water. Like, you know, when you run in 100 degrees, I have to bring a whole hydration pack and bottles, and it's like putting on scuba gear almost. But in the 60s, not unless it's a long run, yeah. Like, I did a 20-mile run last January. Yeah, I brought a hydration pack for that just because if you're going to be running for 3 hours, you need something. But yeah. I'm probably going to call it a night here. Next week, I'm not going to be streaming next week. This will be my last stream ever from this location. I'm moving to a new apartment on September 26th, but the thing is I'm packing all this stuff up on Monday, this upcoming Monday, because that's my only off day from Ironman training, and that's the only off day I'll have to do stuff like pack before I move. So this is my last ever stream from this office. So the next time you see me is going to be in my new apartment. And honestly, I don't know where I'm going to set this stuff up at just because it's going to be a 1-bedroom, not a 2. So I'm not going to have a dedicated room like this one to put all my stuff in. So honestly, I don't know. So I guess you'll have to tune into my next stream to see how I got it all figured out. But I won't be here next week because, like I said, all this equipment's going to be packed up. So thank you for all the streams you tuned into and all the videos you tuned into that are filmed right here in this apartment. But I'm moving. The main reason I'm moving is because I just didn't need I just don't feel like I need the 2-bedroom. Like, yeah, it's nice to have a dedicated room for my desk and like my workstation and everything. But at the cost, you know, you do a cost benefit analysis. Basically, I can save $700 downgrading to a 1-bedroom. Is it worth basically paying $700 a month for an extra room? No. So I'd rather have the $700 than spend it on an extra space. So that's the main reason I'm moving. And 2, I just want to get away from downtown Fort Worth. So this apartment is, you know, right by downtown Fort Worth, and there's just too much crime in the area. Like, I have stuff stolen off my patio all the time. People getting their apartments broken into all the time. Their cars' windows smashed in. So I'm moving up into the suburbs away from the crime. So yeah, tune in a couple weeks, hopefully. What would that be? September like 28th-ish. Hopefully I'll have everything set up by then. I can't make any promises, but yeah, so that'll kind of be like the motivation and reason for you to tune into my next stream. Moving, see how I got everything set up in my new place. But remember, when I first started this channel, that was a 1-bedroom apartment, and I just did it from the living room kitchen area, so we will see. I appreciate it, Jonah Mickelson, on my Ironman training. I'm 1 month from tomorrow is my Ironman. So just to finish out the chat before I head out, Jay Boat, you said Nevada sucks. Yes, they do. Will Iowa cover 23 against anyone? I don't know. It's a great question. We'll see this week. It'll be hard to do that against the Big Ten. Big Short 08, I think NFL spreads are the most sharply spread out of all sports due to market volume. You are correct. That's why it's so hard to beat. The market knows. They always know. And with that, I am out. I will see you guys hopefully in a couple weeks if the move goes well. Stay tuned for the mystery location of my next stream. I have no idea. So I'll know when you know. Peace out, guys.